everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Unwinding with Blake and Zach. I think we're doing this episode a couple weeks late, but hey, that's how it goes.
A little too busy unwinding.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It's been the holidays, but look, behind the scenes, this is, we got a business to run.
That's true.
Right?
Very
Something
true.
like that. So this is an exciting episode because we are actually joined by a guest, Mr. Ben Pruess. Would you please say hello?
Hello.
Very good. So,
Have you done this before? That was really
I am
professional
a
podcast.
professional podcaster.
cool.
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice. So Ben is the owner and founder, co-founder. I already messed this all up.
Co-founder. You had it.
Co-founder of ThinkNerve. How do you describe ThinkNerve?
ThinkNerve is a small digital design and development studio. And so we work with a bunch of different brands and organizations on all things digital. Design, development, strategy, and all the things that come along with maybe running an online business, a brick and mortar business, any type of business or brand.
Yeah.
Cool. That's much better than my description. I was like, am I going to call him a web company? or something?
I literally have a different response every time because I feel like there's never been one specific thing that we were like truly focused on.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff. So it's really hard to describe, but I'm sure we'll get get into the gruesome details.
Didn't you make like a Kung Fu Panda Flash game? Wasn't that your joint?
Yeah. For a while there, back in the Flash days, if anyone's old enough to remember, we were a big Flash company. That's kind of how we grew from our infancy into, a more legitimate company working with legit brands and doing, fun stuff like making video games.
Yeah. I'll say for my part, like what I think, because some people might be like, why are you talking to this random guy who owns like a digital agency?
Yeah.
Please
go for it.
I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
Please. Anyway, it's like, I think that the tone of this podcast is very much like, I think, a more honest and down to earth look at what it's like to actually run a business, and a business that I think some people would say is fairly successful. And I think that, that's very, Ben's a friend of ours, in addition to being we're a client of his, and he's really into watches. We'll get all that stuff. But I think like the conversations I've had with you about business have been sort of more in line with the conversations I've had with Zach and my business partners about business than, let's say, the sort of like, frankly, kind of like blowhard standing on, appearances, conversations I've had with a lot of people in the watch industry and elsewhere. And I think that's really refreshing. And again, I don't know if you'd characterize her this way. I think of you guys as very successful over there at ThinkNerve. I think you guys do really amazing stuff. You work with amazing clients, and like, I don't know. I just think it's interesting to talk to real people about their businesses, about successful businesses. Yeah, no, exactly.
I think it's such an interesting thing to kind of, peel back a little bit and learn about the process of building a business. Like you said, when it's an honest conversation and, not the like let's like praise a CEO kind of a thing, which you often hear. And I think on this podcast, we'll probably do this, I don't know, every few episodes or something. We have a list going of some people we think would be interesting that aren't also specifically in the watch industry. I mean, there might be some, because we are obviously friends with a bunch of like, micro brand owners and things like that. But also tangential to the industry, related to internet, related to just small businesses, commerce, things like that.
Yeah.
But Ben, I mean, so Blake mentioned it, but so we actually know you through watches. And actually, wait, we're screwed this whole thing up. Let's do a wrist check. Ben, as the guest of honor, what watch are you wearing?
Today I'm wearing a Tudor 7928. It is from around the late 60s, I want to say. It's the last dial iteration of the 7928 Submariner.
It's a very nice watch.
Thank you.
That's a proper Tudor sub.
Yeah, I've had this watch, close to a decade now, I think.
Wow, really?
And the thing I love about vintage is the watch kind of looks different than it did when I first got it. It spends a lot of time in the dark, and I think that leads to more sort of patina on the lume and all that good stuff. But I love this watch, and I love Tudor in general.
Yeah, they look super clean. Do you know, has it been refinished, or is it just?
I would say the case is pretty strong. I think, obviously the word unpolished is used a lot. I don't know that this is unpolished, but it's better than any other vintage Tudor Rolex that I've owned from a case perspective.
Yeah, that's sick.
Little known fact, which now you will all know, many of our early strap photo shoots were on Ben's watches. So remember, I feel like when we came up with the Highcraft Vintage, maybe even Adapt, you were a model for the Adapt.
I believe
shoot.
I was a wrist model at one point as well.
Yeah, we've utilized Ben well, sometimes paying him, so other times not.
Yeah,
that's true. Free services like modeling.
And actually, I did not technically pay for this watch either. I traded a watch for it that I was paid in barter for doing a website.
Wow.
So
do you get that a lot?
Full circle here.
Like, I feel like websites are always, I always tell people this, like paying to have websites made competently, at least, like is sometimes like shockingly expensive.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of people trying to like negotiate with you? Like, oh, I'll give you this service, I'll give you that,
Not really. It's definitely a lot of negotiating.
Yeah.
But we're not getting anything out of it. We're getting less out of it, I think.
Of course. Yeah.
You give, they take.
Yeah, we get nothing.
Okay, Blake, what watch are you wearing?
I'm wearing a G-Shock. I think it's called the Virtual Armor Protect, perhaps. It's one of their titanium 5600 models they came out with a few years ago. It's got this kind of like mech futuristic writing on the side, and they're like drilled holes on the bracelet. And I think sometimes people have a hard time wrapping their head around sometimes the more expensive G-Shocks and like what the value is, because I think this one retails for like $1,600 or $1,700. And I feel like this is a watch that when I show it to people, they're like, they understand where the value is going. Like it's there's just like a refinement to it that is like much better than like some of the more affordable metal ones, and certainly like the resin ones. But yeah, I love this watch.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
Yeah, I remember when those came out, they were pretty different, pretty exciting. They were kind of messing around with some of those, like they had like the Tron one, and they had some laser camo stuff. Yeah, that one is exceptionally cool. I feel like, and then they made another one which had like another camo pattern on it, and then maybe they haven't made any since.
Yeah, they made one with like kind of like almost like a pastel angular camo coloring on it, which was cool. Yeah, they do all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah,
crazy stuff.
What do you wear?
I have on Breguet Tradition 7037.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just felt, I don't know, it was like kind of a gray day out, and I just felt like I need a little warmth, some yellow gold. I don't know. Yeah, it happens. So Ben.
Yes.
We met at a Red Bar. You know that? Did you remember?
We did meet at Red Bar. Yeah. Was it at Red Bar? Or was it a special event? Or was it?
I think it was at Red Bar.
Okay. Yeah.
But those days we would also have plenty to drink, so I don't 100% recall all the details. But since then, we've all gotten to know each other pretty well. We go to concerts together on occasion.
Yes.
Some metal shows. And as Blake said, you also do all of our web services. Is that the right word? I don't know the words for this.
You're our full service tech stack.
Yeah. We
we've been on GitHub with you.
What do we do? We worked together for a long time too.
I think the first big project you did is you built our shop. So the Wind Up Watch Shop, as of 2018, you built, and your team exclusively has updated and modified and all that kind of stuff. And then you didn't build the blog, but have been maintaining it, and also like pretty drastically rebuilt it, or like
a number of
it.
refreshes and feature enhancements and custom templates and those sorts of fun things.
Yeah. But so you've had ThinkNerve going with your partner since high school, right?
Yes, 2002. His mother drove us down to the county offices to register our business.
That's so cool.
Is there no like age requirement for a business?
There isn't. And they actually gave me a credit card and a bank account since I had the business certificates. They must have taken my ID. I was 17 years old, and they, I got at least like a Visa business card and a checking account from Chase for sure.
Wow. It's a lot of power for
Yeah.
17-year-old.
So Zach and I always talk about how like when we first started talking about doing Worn and Wound, it was kind of like we didn't have a business in mind. But I can't imagine you guys started making websites and Flash experiences without a business in mind. So like what was going on in your 17-year-old brains that you were like, we're going to start a business together?
You know, my business partner, Mike Merlo, not here with us today, but I wish he was. It would be fun. You know, we knew each other probably since we were like 13 or 14. And we were just computer nerds. So I was lucky enough to have, you know, a computer from a pretty young age because my grandfather was into that stuff. And so we would get like a hand-me-down. And so, you know, messing around with like DOS prompt stuff when I was, you know, probably around 10 years old kind of turned me into the computer and like command line sort of world of computers. And, you know, and obviously, you know, that was around the time that the internet came out also, mid 90s. And so moving forward from there, we just kind of got deep into the computer world. We were just doing it for fun, to mess around. Not all of it was probably things I'm proud of doing from back then, but these were the days, you know, if anyone out there remembers the AOL chat room days and Macrobots and punters and all these other things that you really could have a lot of fun with. And there was really no consequences.
No, you get kicked out of the chat room.
Yeah, like you really couldn't get in trouble. It was a lawless land. So just messing around got us really into computers. And then when we were juniors in high school, we had a computer class. You know, our school was pretty bare bones, you know, like Long Island public school. Like there was nothing special at that time, but they introduced a Visual Basic C++ class while we were juniors. And so we both elected to take it. And I think it was obvious to our teacher, who was really just like a math teacher moonlighting as a programming teacher who had no programming background at all, was just, you know, going by the book. Wonderful guy. I still keep in touch with him to this day. You know, he recognized that we were like several classes beyond the stuff that we were doing. So he basically, you know, let us kind of do whatever we wanted in the class. And he had us teach a couple classes, but ultimately he referred us to a friend of his who was looking to do a website for his like commercial real estate company. I don't know how to describe it fully, but they're also still a client of ours today on a very small scale. But, you know, one thing led to another. He introduced us and they were like, why don't you, you know, work on this after school for a little bit, a couple $100 or something. And we were like, wait a second. And so we made it legit. We formed a company. We had like a nice proposal out to them and, you know, they agreed to it, and it was for a decent sum of money for, you know, two punk kids.
Can I ask how much it was?
So we had word that, you know, they were getting bids for like $30,000 to $50,000. This was in 2002, which you know, that was a large amount. And, you know, we ended up putting a proposal together for 11 grand.
Wow.
And they said yes. And it was awesome. I was able to buy like my first car. Like, I mean, it was a beater, but it was like, you know, 5K or 6K at that day. You know, it was pretty wild. And so, you know, after that, we were like, all right, this is real deal. Like we could make money with this. Obviously we were, you know, not gonna, you know, we still had to finish high school. We had our sights set on going to college. And so we kind of just like worked our way through random projects, through college. And, you know, once we graduated, which luckily I did it in 4 years, it was close. We were like, yo, like we have enough work to kind of float us for, you know, at least half a year, and like, let's see what happens. And one thing led to another, and kind of met who we had to meet and made some connections and networked our way through and kind of grew it over time. So yeah, we didn't know, like we knew that we liked to mess around on computers. I don't think we knew that there was a future in it for us necessarily, or what we wanted to do with it. And I think when we figured out that we could offer these, creative and technical services for people and get paid for it, it was like, well, we can do something that we actually, number one, like. We were self-taught for the most part. We never had to like get trained or feel like it was being forced into us. Like it wasn't like a career pathway necessarily that we were being pushed into. So it was kind of really cool to be able to just see ourselves realize, hey, we could do this. And here we are today.
What did you go to college for?
I went to Baruch College for marketing management. And Mike went down to Full Sail University, which is like a creative audio technical school in Orlando. And they have like accelerated programs. So I think one of the things that helped us too is he was done with his schooling in like half the time as mine. And he kind of got out there and started working freelance for companies doing development. And that's how we ended up making, our initial connections that kind of became actual clients and grew from there.
No. So after 17, did you ever have a real job outside of ThinkNerve?
I never did.
That's crazy.
I'm so lucky.
So you've never had a boss?
I've never made a resume.
Wow.
Like I made one in school because you had to make it I mean, I'm very fortunate that I was able to do that. And I think it's, it's a long time of doing the same thing. So, like you guys know, like you got to kind of reevaluate and try to figure out, how do you keep this interesting every so often? We can build products and build things, but like, when you're doing the same thing for a long time, like it's hard to keep it interesting. And so finding those ways, I think is one of the keys that I'm still trying to figure out every day as well.
Yeah. I also imagine specifically with what you do, that technology, I mean, in the last 22 years has dramatically changed. Like you're talking about Flash before, obviously. Yeah. Now you're not using Flash. Like, how have you dealt with adjusting to just a changing environment?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of just have to do that naturally, because when you are, an agency, you are chasing a lot of work. And quite frankly, a lot of times it's not even really in your core skill set, or you don't have anybody on the team that's really even capable of doing a specific thing, but you go for it anyway. And you kind of figure it out from there, whether it's resourcing or having to learn something different yourself. So I think it's, you have to change with technology. I think nowadays we're at a point where at least the technology feels like it's more accessible, more widely used, like it's easier to rapidly do things and, streamline all sorts of workflows and things. So I think, it's a constant learning process. That's for sure.
Do you feel like AI is a thing that you have to be able to talk about with clients? Like, is that creeped into your work?
Yeah. I've been hesitant about AI just because, for me, to keep my own brain sharp, I'm thinking like people are like, to use AI to do that or draft this. And like, I will definitely use AI to help storyboard things out or outline certain things. But, it's not the same as coming from your own head.
Sure.
And keeping the brain fresh there. So I think I'm still trying to figure out ways that we can use AI for our clients in a way that's meaningful.
Would you say, like, do you think that we don't have to keep talking about AI, but like, do you think that it's not going to be quite what people think it's going to be? Like, it's not going to, like, do you think that's the kind of thing that's going to like eliminate the need for your services or something in the future? Like, does that feel like a bridge too far?
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's, I'm interested to see where it goes.
Yeah.
We're using it where it makes sense for our business. But we're not like, we're not right now like pitching AI based work or projects really.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably not as relevant to some of the work we do, which is, you know, right now a lot of like e-commerce focused stuff. And it, you know, I think it has its use cases, but I'm not too worried about it. Hopefully it just makes everything easier for all of us, you know?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Have you found like the arc of business has sort of changed? Like so you're saying, like there's things that are sort of easier to learn now than it used to be. Like this used to be very esoteric stuff, like getting into coding, right? And now every generation, ours and after, it's pretty much trained up, right? So it's just people know things more. How has that affected the business? Is it like, I don't know.
I think from a business perspective, it's like the stuff we do, while we're doing it at a certain caliber and we're putting a lot of work and strategy and, you know, thought behind it. Like there's obviously a lot of, you know, stuff you can kind of bootstrap yourself, without even any experience. And I think that's definitely affected, you know, our business, especially at like in the recent years where, you know, we're trying to figure out how to do work for the same amount of work for less because somebody else is going to undercut it at the end of the day that knows how to do it, you know, or can do it themselves just from using, you know, a DIY toolkit or something like that.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's the biggest sort of like threat from competitors, that it's like a race to the bottom in terms of pricing? It's like somebody's going to just always be able to come along and do it for cheaper or try.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, it's all relative. But you know, it's definitely, I think people and clients right now they're caring really about budget first, regardless of kind of what the end goal is. You know, it's got to fit the budget, you know?
Yeah. Which I imagine is kind of tough because, I mean, having been in the position of like, you know, working with you guys to like create, you know, something online, like your mind can kind of go into like some pretty grandiose places.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially like knowing some of the clients you've worked with, like where, you know, for art, it's like an e-commerce shop, but you know, you've worked with clients that do all kinds of things and there's all kinds of crazy stuff you can build into the website. I'm sure people's expectations for what they're going to get are pretty out of whack sometimes.
Yeah. I think that's one of the nicer things maybe about today is that so many more things are kind of standardized and like user behaviors, and, you know, you pick up your phone, you start swiping, you know, there's just things that are baked into how things kind of need to operate for the most part. So,
yeah,
that's interesting. Like, I mean, other than the AI conversation, which seems to be like the dominating one, like there doesn't seem to be much in the way of like real, I don't know, shifts, big behavioral cultural shifts now, because things, like you're saying, they're baked in, like the way you navigate a website. This is like, if you go and browse 40 e-com websites of like, you know, I don't know, mattress companies and probably like the dish companies you see on the subway, like they probably all have like a very similar format with like different sort of skins, because like you're saying, people kind of have deduced what the best way to
we've figured out what works, you know?
Yeah.
And you can continue to test and optimize and tweak things, but there's kind of like a standard starting point to a lot of things these days. And I think where, you know, the more sort of creative stuff is happening, you know, and logistics is like behind the scenes, and data you're collecting, what you're doing with it, you know, how you're advertising to people and retargeting them and all that sort of stuff. So it's like, you need to have that sort of baseline experience that works really well. But it's like figuring out how to get the eyeballs and the people to it, and continue to, you know, engage them as, you know, visitors or customers or whatever they are.
Yeah. I imagine that kind of like, not that it's one size fits all, but that like, you know, certain clients with certain needs, like they're going to get the same product ultimately, or like something similar. Like, does that contribute to your like want to do something more interesting? Like you were saying, like to mix things up.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think that, if somebody's going to come to us with an idea that's, let's say it's lackluster, like we could always, it's our job to put a spin on something, right? We have to give it that special something, even if it's not kind of coming to us with the juice that it needs. So I think it's, almost maybe preferable if we have more wiggle room on, what we can kind of propose or come up with as a solution.
It's interesting. It's something we taught, like, just thinking about the differences between your business and ours, like something we talk about a lot internally is, for a long time with Worn and Wound, like I wouldn't really even say that we had clients. Like we had, for a long time, it was the shop was really the primary revenue driver. And then the events, I think, sort of started coming along. But, we're doing a lot more creative work for people and more for brands, more advertising, but also, frankly, like behind the scenes white label work. We have a creative services, division of the department, and it's something we talk about a lot. I think you more than anyone, because I think you come from that world. You're like, it's a different game when you have a client, like when you are trying to meet client expectations.
I don't like clients.
Yeah, no, Zach does not like clients. But yeah, it's like, it's a totally different ball game. There's a totally different way of like communicating and setting expectations and meeting expectations. And it's very stressful. I personally find it very stressful.
Yeah.
Cause like we are kind of like for so long just kind of got to do things the way we wanted to do it because it was our product. Like we were the client, we were making the website, we were making the content, we were making the event. Yeah. And now it's like someone's contracting you to make a commercial and it's like,
and there's, if you don't deliver, like there's consequences, like sometimes big ones contractually and things like that. So, it's, it kind of reminds me of like, my family has always been like, or friends like, oh, it must be so great to be your own boss. And it's like, I have clients, like those are my bosses. I have multiple bosses and like, there's no wiggle room. Like if we get fired, like that could be, that could be 20% of like our business.
Yeah.
So
in some respects, we're your boss.
Yeah. Like, please don't fire me after this.
I had an awful boss years ago, but he had like one decent saying, which was that actually he had two, but the other one has a bunch of expletives in it. And so the one that I can say now is you can make money doing what you want. You can make a lot of money doing what other people want.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like the ethos of that business because like everything we made there was horrible, but it's what the clients wanted. I mean, it's just we did like stuff for golf companies and things like that. And it was like the most boring work ever. But that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
Like a golf ball display for Dick's Sporting Goods. It's not going to be very exciting.
Yeah. Well, I remember you working there and kind of talking about the projects you were working on. And I think I was always kind of surprised at like the clients you guys worked with because they're like big name clients. Because like you kind of describe the people there as like kind of scumbags. But like that also kind of jives because it's like it kind of takes a certain like lack of integrity or perspective to just be like, I'll do literally whatever you want. You know what I mean? And it's like, I know from working with you, and I'm sure it's different with like larger clients, but it's like, you push back on us when we have like stupid ideas or like when we're not thinking about things the right way. You're like, you really need to consider this. Like you never have told us like, I'm not doing that. But I like when you give me strong feedback, I read between the lines that you're like, that's a bad idea. Do you feel like that's like a delicate balance? Do you ever get pushback from people when you give them that feedback?
Definitely over the years for sure. The recent years, like we're very lucky. All of our clients are awesome. Like we don't really have any panic moments anymore. And there used to be a lot more of that, back in the day. And, we also were a little bit smaller of a team now. We had grown at one point and, having like a team of 13 folks working together all remotely. We've always been remote, and having like 20 to 30 projects going on at the same time, definitely a little chaotic.
Yeah.
And to that, it's so like, and you mentioned this to me, but like within the company, you often act as the project manager.
Yeah. I'm sort of the do-it-all, business guy, creative, technical. Like I have my hands in a little bit of everything. And it's good that way because I think you know, especially when you're trying to manage a team. People like, it's nice to know that I'm coming from a place where like I have some hands-on experience with these different roles as well. So I'm not just like barking orders as, you know, your boss.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Kind of like, I'm just curious, kind of taking a step back, not to move on from this part of the conversation, but like, as you guys were growing the business, because, you know, I think, you know, I don't mean to be weird, but it's like, you seem like a pretty successful person. Like you know, having built a business myself, like the thing I take the most like value in is like, I've been able to create the life that I want from this thing that I created, you know, like getting aside from like how much money you make, it's like, you know, are you able to support your family? Do you have, you know, the things you need, that kind of a thing? And I think about like, you know, you and your wife like have everything that you guys need. You've like really built a wonderful life for yourself with the business. Like at what point did you know that you were going to be able to achieve that with this business? Like at what point were you like, no, I can have the life I want?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was when we just started kind of growing and getting a lot of like bigger work and stuff. This was probably when I was in my mid to late 20s. And yeah, we were crushing it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's easy to know when you're crushing it. You can see it. You can see the checks coming in, and like you have the need to hire more or, you know, outsource to another partner and things like that. So, you know, when that's going on, it's pretty clear, like things are good. You know, I think it's easy to get caught up in that, and really make that like being financially successful. I don't think is like, I think that's a product of running a nice business. It's not like the goal. Like we're not out here trying to maximize profits and, you know, show me the bottom line. We're just trying to make a living, and, you know, if we can get paid to do something we enjoy doing, you know, I think it's definitely, it's paid off over time for sure.
Yeah. Would you say that like, there's been some sort of like conscious decision on your part with your business to like not pursue that like growth at any cost, make as much money as humanly possible at any cost, and like take a step back to focus on being happy?
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty stressed out back then. You know, I still take blood pressure medications. Although, you know, I think it was really like everything being like not chaos, but just being so busy all the time, like working, you know, 16-hour days, having clients in like almost every time zone and all these things. Like it's a lot. And yeah, I think, you know, at this point, at the point where like we're older now, like we're more choosy with the work we do. You know, we don't have to just take on everything. Like that was our old approach. Like the work's coming in, great. More work's coming in. We can't handle it. Great. Sign us up. Like work's coming in. I don't know how we're going to get this done in time or in the schedule. Who cares? Sign me up. Let's do it. We'll figure it out.
So basically you had the feeling of like, I might not get my homework done a lot.
I mean, we always did figure it out, but I definitely was hard. And, you know, I never really traveled anywhere. You know, if I would go somewhere on vacation, I would always be working.
Yeah.
If I got lucky enough and we timed it right, you know, maybe I would have a lighter workload. And there's really, you know, there's no one to really offload the work to at that point. Everybody's all loaded up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think that's just something I've always like kind of admired about you, is I feel like you have like a really healthy like work-life balance. Like you have a lot of interests outside of work. You have a lot of things that you always find yourself doing that aren't work. Whereas I find that, I don't know if you feel the same way, Zach, like I kind of feel like when people ask me like what I'm about, I'm like, I work. Like I have this business and that's what I'm doing. And it's
It's a silly anecdote, but like years ago, Hamilton from Crown and Caliber, this is like older pre-Hodinkee Crown and Caliber, they were doing like a video series on people in the industry, and they'd done some where like, oh yeah, we talked to this guy and we went to his Porsche and we talked to his life and it was all this cool stuff, and they're like, we want to do this with you, and we're like, there's no Porsche, There's no like cool thing. There's no rock climbing. Like you can come to our office.
Mm-hmm.
That's our life.
Yeah.
Do you still want to do it?
Yeah.
You know?
No, I remember that.
I think
Yeah.
we're still on the internet too.
And I think that like at that time we weren't making very much money, and like not that we make like crazy money, but like we've gotten to the point with the business where like we have the life we want to have, like able to support our families and like do interesting things and all that kind of stuff. And it's like I don't think that I'm at the point where I've figured out how to get that work-life balance. Like I haven't prioritized that yet. I'm trying, but like I'm definitely not even remotely close as you are.
Yeah. I mean, it's a more recent development. It's definitely like the last 5 years for me I've been able to do that. And, I think part of that is just, maturing in what you're doing, being more comfortable, also being maybe more efficient at things or, just better time management. So many things, but
yeah.
I mean, it's just the priorities. I think it's actually really, interesting talking to you and just our own approach to these things. Cause like, I mean, sure, there's always sort of a need to grow and kind of get to a certain coasting point and make sure everyone's happy and everyone's taken care of kind of a thing. But we're like, I mean, we don't have delusions. We're going to be making $100 million each or billions or any of that kind of stuff that it feels like everyone, like if you were to look at the perspective of the tech world and how it's sort of dropped on you, like it's like, oh, well, you sell your company for $10 billion. That's what a successful business is. Yeah. But like the reality, there is a lot more like of the small business, almost mom and pop shop style thing that at this point is like, on the internet business, where obviously we're a mom and pop shop, but it's like, that kind of thing. And it's just about hitting a point that works, it's like, it's very different,
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that like a lot for me, that's like, I think at the core of what I'm trying to say. And like, I think for me, like what a lot of the conversations we've had have been is like kind of breaking down certain myths of like running a business. And I think that that's like the big one for me is like, what's the point of doing it? You don't like really ask yourself that question going into it necessarily. And I think that like, for a long time, you just kind of buy into this idea that like the point of it is to make a bunch of money and grow the business and do all this kind of stuff. But like at a certain point, you have to take a step back and be like, why are we actually doing this? And I think that, our happiness is a part of it. Like the employees' happiness is a part of it. We make all kinds of decisions like that are like technically not the right decision, quote unquote, for our business, but it's makes our employees happier. Like, it's just like, that's the point of doing this. It's like you build a community of people you want to be around and you do things you enjoy. And I don't think that's something that a lot of, or I don't know, at least it's just not part of the facade that a lot of people try to put up about running a business. I don't know. I think,
And to totally change the topic, but so Ben, I mean, other than us, you have several clients in the watch industry. I'm kind of just curious, like working in that aspect of it, like, how is it different? What have you kind of learned about watches? Maybe that's like a little bit, I don't know, something that people wouldn't expect. The commerce world of watches, just we've talked about, I think on the other episode, but like when we first started this, like figuring out advertising and all that stuff, like it was hard because actually maybe we haven't talked about this, but like when we first tried to do like marketing for products on our site, like we went to people and they didn't really know what to do with a watch.
Yeah, no.
So you work in this and though, like, what's it like?
I think it's cool. I mean, it's one of my favorite industries in terms of the product it's producing. I connect with it. I am a watch collector, as you guys said. Working in the watch industry with watch clients, I've sort of learned that, it's not that easy to sell a watch, especially depending on the price point that they're at. So there's something to think about there when it comes to like the luxury, perception and, just being able to find and attract folks that are going to buy your product. And I think the watch industry seems to have a lot of highs and lows, depending on maybe what's going on in the world or, obviously I think it's in a bit of a lull now, over the last year or so. But before that, it was like craziness, crazy boom. And then before that, it was like sort of not that crazy. Like it definitely it comes in waves. So having to keep up with that, I think, is a challenge, because there's just going to be years where like sales are down and there's like really nothing you could do about it other than like work your hardest to try to maintain, you know, a baseline and, you know, not go into the dip, you know, any further than you need to.
Yeah. I think like kind of going back to what you were saying, Zach, one of the challenges we faced when we started doing like paid advertising, when we would work with or like try to work with paid advertising agencies, I always say like if you have like a protein bar and like 3 flavors of it, they can sell the crap out of that all day on the internet. But when you tell them you have like a watch shop with 30 brands and each brand has 20 SKUs and this, you know, the price points are all over the place. But even for like, you know, a mono site, like where you're just focused on one brand, it's like, it's a totally different ball game. Like, did you find it like that when you started working with watch brands? Was it very different from maybe your other e-com experiences?
One of the interesting things is that, you know, the watch brands kind of like compete with themselves, right? So you have these brands that you can buy directly from them online, but then they also have authorized dealers that you can buy from online. And, you know, these companies end up competing with their retailers for ad space, and and it's all driving up the cost of like selling the same product, which is interesting. And I wish there was a way to fix that and like coordinate, but it's, you know, that's definitely a little quirk.
Yeah. I think that it's like sort of going to your point about the sort of ups and downs of the market. Like from the time that we've been in this business, I think we've seen a lot of brands trying to get into e-commerce and start selling watches on their own. But the big challenge was always that they had this network of ADs that they didn't want to piss off.
Right.
They didn't want to start selling it online because their ADs would be like, what the hell? Like, you're kind of killing our business, whatever. So it's been this kind of dance back and forth. And I think one of the places we've kind of gotten to is that while brands have started selling things online, I think in maybe these down times, they are maybe appreciating the value of the AD a little bit more. Like, you know, you can put a little bit of pressure to buy a bunch of watches from us. And like, we don't have to worry about, like you said, doing the really hard work of getting people to buy something online. Like, it's not easy. You don't just like you put a product up on the internet. No one knows it's there unless you put a lot of time and money into getting people to learn that it's there, you know? Yeah, it's been an interesting process. And I feel like it's going to like continue to ping pong back and forth, like what brands want to do.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a time, maybe this is a naive thought to have had, but like a few years ago, there was like kind of had the expectation that maybe like ADs were going to be quite a lot less relevant because it was like, well, the brands can just sell it themselves. But it's clearly not that simple.
It's an experience. I mean, if you're buying a luxury watch, you know, you want that. You know, people want to walk in and get the treatment, you know, have the cocktail or the champagne and have the person put it on their wrist for them and size it up and all that stuff. I mean, I don't particularly want that, but I think that's like, that's people look after that experience.
Yeah. It is very funny. Like, that's probably the thing in the watch industry I have the least experience with is just the actual like high-end purchasing experience. I've bought high-end watches. It usually involves an email, a few clicks, and then like dreading something flying somewhere and then receiving it at home. And that's it, you know, and like you open the box, hopefully there's a watch there, you know, and it's working. I've had watches arrive not working. But like, yeah, you talk to some people and like the first thing they talk about is like, yeah, well, when I went there, you know, they treated me so well. So I really love them. And it's like, it's a whole thing. And I'm like, that's kind of weird to me. Like, it sounds a little awkward to me. But obviously we come back to like, we just opened the showroom. It's not necessary so we can like booze you up, but it's like, so you can experience things in person that is the biggest thing with, I mean, luxury goods, I think probably across the board is like they are so expensive that the sort of throwing money into the void and getting it and not knowing you're going to like it until you have it in your hands is like, I mean, a bizarre, even absurd thing to do if you really think about it, but it's how we live. So obviously we do it, you know?
Yeah. Is that something that like any of your clients on the luxury side have talked to you about? Like, how do you replicate or incorporate some of those like luxurious experiences of being in the boutique to like an online experience. Is that part of it?
I think back in the day when, you know, everyone wanted to like create an online experience. It was like, how can we make it like you're shopping in the boutique? And it's like, you really can't do that.
Terribly slow sites where you like walk through a store and like turn.
And
like,
definitely some
it's like
brands
mist.
did that too. That was not done by us. Okay. But yeah, having to look at those and navigate your, like, it's kind of silly. I mean, we do work on campaigns where we're actually driving foot traffic into physical locations. So I think, you know, you can have a balance of both and make them work together.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like you talked about kind of like mixing it up and trying to keep things interesting. Like, is there anything on the horizon for you that's like a way that you're trying to mix up things on the business side or sort of do interesting things? Or,
you know, I think we're always something's always stirring. You know, we're always pitching, we're always trying to come up with new ideas. Right now we're working on like a little relaunch of our own website, which, you know, if you go to our site right now, I mean, we may have updated it with content a little bit in the last 12 months, but we launched that site probably like 8 years ago. And that's one of the things that we're really terrible at because we don't have, you know, extra resources just laying around to do passion projects all the time. So we've been trying to get that together. So that's something we're a little excited about. And we're using some cool libraries and stuff to do it. So there's some cool little bells and whistles to it that we're a little excited about. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Where'd the name ThinkNerve come from?
Well, funny story. So when we first founded our company, we were not called ThinkNerve. We were called Static Labs.
Oh, that's fun.
Which in hindsight, I guess at the time I wasn't, you know, the wordsmith. Not, you know, like static to me. I basically had, you remember Spencer's Gifts at the mall? I had one of those plasma balls next to my computer.
Out there, I can see it.
Yeah, so,
I bought it. Yeah.
So it was like, that was like our initial logo, like a plasma ball, and it was like Static Labs.
Hell yeah.
You
Like
weren't thinking
static electricity.
Yeah.
Not other meanings. of
Not
static.
just like never changing the same always, like completely opposite of what you want like your advertising company to be called.
Yeah. English has its problems like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
like we are sometimes called what, like wound and mourn, or
Yeah. We didn't really think about the wound connection.
Yeah. So probably about like 4 years after, it was when we started getting, you know, busy, like post school, doing real work, is when we were like, we have to change this name to something. Came up with ThinkNerve because it's sort of supposed to be symbolic of like the nerve in your body that's doing the thinking. Again, weird stuff you come up with when you're, you know, in your early 20s. But it was like one of those things, write down a bunch of words on a piece of paper and like start combining them together.
Yeah.
So, yep.
I like it.
You're the only think nerve I know.
It's true.
You know,
There was a good jingle out there. Shout out to Dan Savage if he's listening. But we have a friend that used to troll us with jingles, basically. Because we have some other mutual friends that run agencies and stuff, and he came up with ThinkNerve, you're ahead of the curve, ThinkNerve.
that's pretty good.
We
Nice.
could run ads for you on the One Song Podcast Network, and that could be the jingle if you want.
But yeah, that was something that, you know, maybe we'll put an Easter egg on the new site where you hover over something and the jingle starts.
That would be awesome.
Excellent. We're coming up on 50 minutes, sort of the general runtime of these things. But before we go, Ben, since you are a watch collector, anything you think you have your eyes on now? What's exciting to you?
Not specifically. I do have an incoming,
Okay.
which is the Tudor Pelagos 39
Oh yeah.
titanium. I know I'm a little late to that party, but you know, I don't have a ton of like, I don't have like a great modern watch for doing stuff in,
Mhm.
like kind of a do it all. So I'm gonna try it out. So waiting on it. Maybe this week or next week it's supposed to come in for me.
That's an awesome
cool.
watch. Yeah. There's no being late to it. You know, these are watches. They last forever.
I feel like that release kind of came out and then like nobody talks about it anymore.
Yeah.
That's sort of the nature of the hypiness of this industry. It's like
Yeah.
you have like your 15 minutes and then people move on to the next thing. But like,
I will
it's so
say,
funny. When you get the watch, you kind of want to love it
Yeah.
longer than 15 minutes.
I will say, and it's something I've thought about Tudor of Tudor in the past, that like that really does almost feel like you miss the wave on their watches, because like there's so much hype around their releases every year, and like they do kind of iterate on designs. I don't know, I'm not describing it well, but it's like it's almost like, well, you didn't get the Black Bay 58 when it first came out, and now it's like, why would you even buy that watch? Like, because
Yeah.
they've got all this other cool stuff. It's like, yeah, I understand the feeling of like miss the wave. Like that makes sense
it's
to
like
me.
we're revisiting,
Yeah,
you know.
that's a cool. I think about that watch all the time.
Yeah, it's a good one. I think it was, if anything, it was underappreciated in its moment. I think
Yeah.
because it was like kind of an unexpected watch, and then a little bit different than people expected.
Mhm.
Like, you know, I remember. Now we're just talking about watches. Anyway, you know, it had the like not the matte dial. Like it wasn't quite what you expected from a Pelagos.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was in the middle of like a season of like everything was really popular right then. So yeah, like it kind of got buried a bit, but it's just a good. I've been thinking about it recently too. Like it's just a good watch, right? And a good like that's a good thing, you know.
Yeah, and they've got those like other like spicy Pelagos releases they've come out with that like
Spicy-
that like are
that
just
sounds like a drink. I really hope that at
the
a,
spicy Pelagos.
you go to these events and they often have cocktails
Yeah.
named after themselves.
Yeah.
So a spicy.
They can have
Pelagos.
that for free.
Is
Yeah.
it Pelagos or Pelagos? Because I've been watching a lot of videos and it's kind of
It's whichever comes out of my mouth at that time. You know, it's like I don't know.
Pelagos. I don't know. Yeah, I think I've always said Pelagos.
Yeah,
Same.
I've always said it.
I'm sure it's Pelagos.
Pelagos.
That
Maybe
sounds
it's
right.
Pelagos.
Yeah,
Like archipelago, Pelagos. I don't know.
who knows?
Well, we'll probably hear about that in the comments,
Mm-hmm.
of which there aren't any. But thank you, Ben. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for
And
having me.
everyone out there for your internet technology needs. Did I get that right? Yeah. Check
Shameless
out Finger.
plug.
Shameless plug. Yeah, we'll talk to you. Well, you'll hear from us next time. Something
I
like
guess. Yeah.
that. All right.
Nailed it.